All right. I think it's on. Um, okay, so I think we wanted to kind of start with talking about something that I brought up yesterday with, I'm going to use the term with air quotes,
Hmm.
reverse racism. Um,
Hmm.
and the context is that um, I tend to provide a little extra encouragement. I provide a little more support. I tend to seek out a particular like demographic that I know might be underrepresented in our field and in academia, higher ed in general. So what kind of got me thinking about it was residency a couple of weeks ago. We're interacting with all these students, we're hearing all these wonderful research ideas, all these things. There were two Black men students who I spent a little extra time with, encouraging their topics, talking with them about their interests. And at one point, one of them had said something really profound to me. You know, I would like to continue with sports research, but I'm also interested in other things.
Hmm.
And we had a conversation then where I'm like, well, you're a whole ass human, right? And so like you don't have to just focus on one thing. I think we kind of talked about this a little bit in the last one. But then I kind of started thinking, do I do something inappropriate when I imbalance that attention, that um, encouragement, that support to certain demographics that I know are underrepresented? Or is that okay to do? Um,
Hmm.
and so I don't know if you want to kind of like speak to anything before I go into my info dump that I found
Yeah,
last
no,
night.
no. I think that so when you text me that, I immediately understood what you are saying. And I think the term that you used, reverse racism, might be the incorrect term. And I know that you and I are
It
very
is.
intentional about trying to figure out what is the precisely correct way to speak about this. Because I think what you're trying to do is support somebody who you know has a higher probability of not being supported within the field. We're in applied behavior analysis, which is kind of couched into psychology, which is usually white woman dominated, right?
Yeah.
So you see this black man, two black men that are in the field, and you want to encourage their work. This particular black man was interested. I spoke with him as well, interested in sports performance and improving sports performance, and that is also a niche within our field.
Yes.
So going deep into it and talking about these things and trying to encourage them to do it. B.F. Skinner said, if you find something interesting, drop everything and study it. So I think that you're really trying to help balance what's already imbalanced in our inequitable frameworks. So, but I just want to be clear that when I say I don't think that reverse racism exists, I think that it's a myth, kind of created by white people who feel like that imbalance is being shifted. And when you have privilege and that privilege is no longer accessible as it was before, it feels like something's being taken away. I understand that. I see that. And I think that that's where the term reverse racism comes from, because they feel like, oh man, now I feel like I don't have the privilege, so I'm losing something. We can recognize that, but we could also say, hey, you might be closer to equity and equal now. And now you might be able to empathize with individuals who never had that point of view or standing. So there's that. And then I don't think that there's anything wrong with trying to support them. I mean, I'm sure that they've had to get to where they are. Black men, PhD students in applied behavior analysis. It's a whole lot of work and a whole lot of barriers. And I talk about this with other Black men all the time. Like when we went to the Black Men in Applied Behavior Analysis Summit, all the black people that I talked to after the summit felt like they didn't have as much stress, as much exhaustion after the summit, because they felt like they didn't have to code switch or mask. They
Right.
didn't have to pretend like this or that. They could just kind of come
Gosh,
as they
yes.
are. So they got to leave feeling like they had their cup filled, instead of feeling like they had to, work harder. So I really commend what you're doing. I think that it's a great thing, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. And I think that being cognizant of it is good, because it then kind of puts you in a place where it's like, okay, well, let me make sure that I am also attending to the other students.
Right, right. And I love the description. I appreciate the validation. And one term that I thought of throughout your discussion was the term fragility. And that's like the my favorite term to describe that discomfort that
Hmm.
people of privilege experience when that power dynamic is starting to level out and become more equitable. Um, I can't remember. I think it was the book White Fragility where I first like read it and was just like, oh man,
Hmm.
this term is great. I'm gonna, use it and generalize it to everything. But change is hard. As an autistic person, like change is hard. I get it, but like
Hmm.
I see it as a good change. But the discomfort of like that fragility is where that really sinks in. And I think that um, that term comes from that defensiveness and that fragility. And oh God, well now it's reversed, and I don't like it because now I'm not on top. And it's like, but did you deserve to be on top in the first place? Subjective. But yeah, I absolutely love it. So I did do a dive into AI because I love AI, in moderation, of course. I found some terms that I thought were really great for this that I know you and I are going to discuss a little bit more in depth. We might kind of do some writing on.
Hmm.
Um, but the term that I love the most, anti-racist allyship in action. And I love it. I'm here for that term. There's also equity-based mentoring, targeted support, intentional mentoring, counteractive or reparative practice, affirmative or compensatory support. Compensatory. Did I say that right? Yes, I did. So yeah, I love all of these terms. I think all of them are way better than reverse racism, quote unquote.
Hmm.
And they definitely do a lot better job of describing what the intention is behind trying to balance that power dynamic. And yeah, I think that that is something that we kind of need to talk about. Like, there's that common stereotype that, well, I have to treat all my students the same. Well, yes, but is kind of my
Hmm.
answer to that. It's like, yeah, I do want to be fair to my students, but what does fair mean? And so, if we're talking about representation in a field that is very vastly majority white women,
Hmm.
and I am one of them. So I'm talking about
Hmm.
myself here too. Um, are we trying to create that more equitable balance, or are we actually being unfair to students in what we're deciding? So where is that line? And so I think that's something that, you and I as instructors will kind of struggle with occasionally,
Hmm.
because people will be so quick to cry discrimination and complain about it.
Yeah.
And that is a concern.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that when you talk about treating all the students equally or giving all the students the same resources, it looks different for different students because
Yes.
different students need different things and they have different reinforcement histories and they have different learning histories. So you need to meet them where they're at and give them what they need. So when it comes to you treating all students equitably, that means that some students are going to need more. Like some students are going to need to come to your office hours every single week.
Mhm.
And some students will never show up because they don't need it.
Yeah.
But being able to support them where they're at is what's important. Just like when we have individualized education plans for students, just like when we have behavior intervention plans for students. Each one is different, set and designed for that student. Don't make cookie cutter interventions or programs. So I think that what you're talking about is valid and important. And it's it's a much more nuanced conversation and situation than just treat all students the same. If I do this for this student, I can't do it for that student, or I have to do it for that student. It's like there's more nuance to it than just that. And not enough people really understand that. Secondly, when it came to those terms, I want to share my screen real quick because one of the terms, can you see that? Yeah. Oh, this is the first time we're
Hmm.
sharing screens. So the many faces of allyship. I don't like people calling themselves allies or saying that I'm an
Right.
ally
That's a great
because
point.
it's just the first phase. Like I can say I'm an ally of people in the Congo, but what does that mean I'm actually
Right.
doing? You know what I mean? It's not precise enough to
It's performative
describe
too.
what's, yeah, yeah, exactly. So then there's like accomplice, which is showing up for historically excluded groups, and there's some risk. And then there's co-conspirators, where you show up with historically excluded groups, and there's high risks. And examples of conspirators are individuals like this white guy that was making sure that this woman wanted to take down a Confederate flag, and the police were going to shock the pole, but he white man put his hand on the pole, knowing that with his white body they wouldn't shock the pole, and they didn't shock the pole, and she was able to take it down. That's a co-conspirator. During the Black Lives Matter movement, I was in some of the marches and demonstrations when we were walking in Los Angeles, and they asked the white protesters sometimes to stand in the front because they could shield us from the police, because when they were in the front, the police never attacked us, and we were all peaceful. So, I mean, those kind of instances are more specific in what co-conspiratorship looks like compared to allyship, which can often be performative and just be a mouthpiece that doesn't go to the next level.
I love that point, and thank you for those beautiful examples. People never cease to disappoint me. And while they're like sad that like this is what we have to deal with and talk about and like work around, it's fact and it's like really depressing. Um, but I'm glad that there are people fighting the fight and doing the things and actually taking action. And I love that point about allyship. I always kind of tend to forget that that word becomes a problem. So thank you for
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And we talk about that with disability support too. Like people are
Hmm.
like, oh, well, I'm a disability ally. It's like, but you still engage in old school ABA practices, so you're not actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think like the distinction that has been made to me is like if you yourself call yourself an ally, it's not okay. But if somebody else calls you an ally from the marginalized group, it's okay.
I agree.
So
I agree. And
okay,
not everybody's on the same page when it comes to the phrase or the word ally.
right.
It's kind of like, I think it's really important that you capitalize the B when you're talking about Black people, Black person. You
Yeah.
capitalize H in Hispanic, you
Hmm.
capitalize A in Asian, so you should capitalize B in Black. But not everybody does it. I understand
Right.
that. And I think that different people have different learning history, so they don't all know the history of these words and phrases. But when we learn better, we do better.
Right. What's important to not do is double down in those situations. I I have so many times that I have provided feedback and I like there are certain demographics who are more receptive than others. I will say that. And
Mhm.
I'm not gonna like call out those demographics, but doubling down is the opposite of what anybody should be doing. Student, educator, we're all learning. Culture is evolving. Culture is
Yep.
ever evolutionary. It's just like science. And so things change. You have to also be adaptable. It's part of our ethical requirement if you're certified under certification boards. And so doubling down, don't do that.
Yeah.
um, don't dig your heels in. I can't tell you how many times I've had an argument with a student over person first versus identity first language. And then I have to throw out, well, I'm autistic and I prefer identity first. Would you talk that way about me? Your professor, knowing that you're using the wrong term that I identify
Hmm.
with. Well, when you say it
Hmm.
like that, I shouldn't have to use my diagnosis to get you to listen to me because
Yeah.
I'm speaking directly from that community. Likewise,
Yeah.
using a capital B for Black and
Yeah.
I've said that to students before, I myself don't identify, but others have told me this is what you need to be doing to identify. And usually it's, received pretty well, but occasionally you get the, well, I was taught this and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but that doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah.
So,
No, I completely agree. And when it comes to that person first versus identity first, I think that's so important, because I've had situations where, like, sometimes the individual wants it to be identity first because it's about
yeah,
their community. They
yes,
feel a connection and just a community with those people that they identify with. Whereas some parents, I've noticed, want person first.
yeah,
And that's where it can get tricky sometimes, especially if they're not in agreement. And what I try to say is like, hey, when I'm talking to the person, if they say this is how I want to be addressed, that's what I'm going to do. That's how I respect them and how they want to be seen and identified. And we have to understand that because it's not just like, because I remember learning for a long time it was, oh, make sure that you do person first. That's the way to make sure we know that they're a person. And it's like, yes. However, the evolution of the way that people want to identify has changed. If the guy's named Joseph and he wants to be called Joe, you call him Joe. I really think it's that simple.
Yeah. Absolutely. It reminds me of that shift that we went from African American into Black because for a long
Hmm.
time we were told use African American, but it's like, but
Hmm.
there's a subset here who are not African American because
Hmm.
they are from the United States and
Hmm.
like and that's the whole thing. It's like, as we evolve in similar spaces, um that person first, identity first, which by the way, thank you for being such an advocate for your learners because it's so easy to fold to the pressure of the caregiver and I get that. I totally get that
Hmm.
because ultimately, like, they're the ones with the power. They're the ones that are saying the things and have the voice.
Hmm.
Um, I also like to use some examples. I didn't realize we would kind of go on this tangent a little bit, but I think it's important. Um, when I talk about my own identity, I had this beautiful example. I wish I could find it right now, but there was this beautiful example of person first kind of shows it like an accessory. Like I am a person and here is my bag of autism. And I
Hmm.
carry it around with me all day. But ultimately, like everything I do, the way that I speak, which might be blunt, it might be abrasive, whatever, it is what it is. That's a part of my autism. The way I
Hmm.
see things and I interact with people, autism. Everything is like this lens of these glasses that I wear, and I like to think of them as rainbow lenses. Um,
Hmm.
because we like to talk about like the neurodivergence rainbow. So I put on my
Hmm.
rainbow glasses and that's my whole experience. So
Hmm.
it's not just a piece of my experience, it's literally my whole identity. It's how I understand the world and my environment. And those are my setting events. Those are the ways that I, figure out contingencies that work for me and don't. And when I explain that sometimes to caregivers, I think it clicks. Um, Also, if you get doubling down, what also helps is the whole idea of if you have to use a phrase to remind yourself that somebody is a human being first, that's a you problem. Like 100% full stop. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've been like, okay, so you have to remind yourself that this person is a human being. Do you
Hmm.
realize how sick that sounds?
Yeah.
Like, what if they don't, now, if they want to be seen that way first because they've had a like ableist punishment history or whatever, that's fine.
Hmm.
But I don't need you to remind yourself that I'm a human before anything else,
Exactly.
because like I should hope that you would have that respect for me. I know you probably don't sometimes, but like, um, I don't know. That's like my ultimate nail in the coffin right there, which love it or leave it, whatever.
I totally understand what you're saying. Like, I remember I had this comment on one of my videos recently, on Red Note, and it was from somebody that's not from America, and they were like, "See, this is the problem with you Americans. You focus too much on race." And I was literally just talking about like the ways that you're impacted, and like the reason why especially black people talk about race so much is because of how it impacts us. Look,
Yes.
I cannot move through the world. Anti-blackness is global. And like there's this like interesting like dichotomy that I'll explain like this. It's like when I go and I sit down in public spaces, oftentimes I'll know that very few people will want to sit next to me unless they have to, because of my blackness. But at the same time, if someone sits next to me and they don't have to, I'm also like, oh, get away from me. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
right,
Because I don't
right.
hustle like my space. So it's this like double-edged sword. And
That's
it's really
so
interesting. Like
funny.
even when I went to Japan, same thing. Like no matter really where I go, that anti-blackness is global. So I cannot remove myself from my black skin and the way that the
Right.
world treats me because of it. So and I think that there's a camaraderie of understanding that we can have within these intersecting
Yeah.
communities.
Oh, 100%. And I love because as you were talking, I was like, it's not like you can just peel off your blackness. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you said it, and it kind of makes me think about those differences in visibility. And so,
Hmm.
like, you not being able to remove your blackness gives you a whole different set of contingencies than me as somebody
Hmm.
who doesn't appear disabled.
Hmm.
And like, if you spend 5 to 10 minutes with me, you see me in person, you can
Hmm.
probably see the autism a mile away. But
Hmm.
if you like don't really pay attention and you don't hear me speak and all that, you may look at me and think, oh, well, she's just like an average white woman. Um,
Yeah.
I do have physical stuff too. And like occasionally I will pull out a cane if I'm having a rough day. And I can't tell you how weird of looks that I've gotten when I've been like at airports needing like a wheelchair assist so I don't have to run. If I do cardio, I'm probably going to pass out. So it's kind of like
Hmm.
a savior for me to not have to do cardio because I hate it anyway. Um,
Hmm.
I've used a wheelchair assist one time at an airport. And the looks
Hmm.
that I got from people when I stood up and walked out of that wheelchair and thanked the person for getting me to the gate without having to run and pass out, all the older people, I'm just going to call them out, just staring,
Yeah.
glaring at
Yeah.
me. Like, and it's just like, you don't know what somebody's body is doing internally. You don't know. And then, of course, I boarded early because I'm autistic. And, they're all just like, this girl is just like taking advantage of this system. It's like, but I'm actually for the first time understanding how I can accommodate my own needs. And so like it's so different because like sometimes I wish I could just wear like the disability, obviously, and then maybe
Yeah.
people wouldn't do it, but like there's just a whole different set of weirdness with people and I
Hmm.
neither are good. Neither are
No.
good. I almost wish that, just be blunt about it. Just come out and
Yeah.
say it, do the thing. But yeah, I think that that also talks. And if you have intersectionality with any of these identities, like being a Black woman who's not visibly disabled, oh my
Hmm.
God,
Yeah.
that just amplifies it by tons. So it's important to address and it's important to acknowledge and to validate and, you know,
I
all the
agree.
all
And
the
I think,
things.
yeah, and I think that there's so many and even just the way that disability or that really like autism looks on like black people, you know what I mean? Like people,
Yeah. Oh
when it
gosh,
comes to
yes.
diagnosing, they're more likely to give like defiant
Yep.
oppositional defiant disorder
They're
and all these other
violent.
things,
Yeah,
exactly,
quote
instead
unquote.
of if it was a white person they would give them the autism straight up or the ADHD and autism straight
Yep.
up. So it's really interesting how these things occur. So there, like, I just wish we could have more education as a society to better understand each other and help each other operate within the environment which we share, that is the world. But
Right.
the individualism has, and the hyper individualism, especially in America, has just really warped the ideology of the typical American. And it's hard to get away from it. You have to unlearn it. It's like
Yeah.
decolonizing, de hyper individualize your mind, you know?
Yeah. And that goes into like, how can we help shape the space that we're given? And like doing intentional mentorship, doing intentional awareness,
Hmm.
acknowledging those intersectional factors. Like me as a white woman, sometimes I don't feel qualified to do advising for individuals who are of a completely different identity. But I think the difference is that I do know how to connect them with community. I do know like, and that's a big thing. Like do your research, do the work where it's like, you know what, if I don't understand why quote unquote reverse racism is a thing, I'm going to sit in that discomfort. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to go down that rabbit hole because I love
Hmm.
deep dives. And then I'm going to figure out why it's a thing, what I want to actually say, and I'm going to fix it. Um, and the same goes for mentorship. We have to model those behaviors because ultimately, I went into teaching because it's like I could affect like a caseload of 10. That's great. Or I could affect the 10 different people who are working with their own 10 different people.
Same,
And
same.
that was the thing. I was like, I can make a bigger social impact. And that's why I think like we've connected because we
Hmm.
have these identities that we've had based in these systems that are definitely like not great, not ideal, and definitely not equitable. And now we know how we can kind of impact that culture a little more. So we're like bigger turds about it. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, and that
Totally here
that
for it.
humility is so important. Like I was asked, I think last year if I wanted to be a part of a group that was presenting at Women in Behavior Analysis.
Yeah,
And I definitely had the expertise and knowledge, but I declined and recommended other women, Black women,
right.
that could take my place because I don't feel as a man at Women in Behavior Analysis. I don't
It's
feel like I should be on
weird.
stage. I mean,
That's a
if
weird
anything, I should
flex.
be in the yeah, I should be in the audience listening. And
Right.
it always kind of, I wouldn't say perturbs me, but it's a little beef that I have that I'll be honest about when it comes to Black men and applied behavior analysis. When I
White
see like
presenters.
they're, and it's not, and like a white presenter every now and then is okay, but if it's
It's
like I did a
weird.
civil discourse. Yeah, I did a civil discourse, and it was me and a white guy having civil discourse at Black men in applied behavior analysis,
I don't like
and
that.
I was just like, why? I had no select opportunity in selection, but I was asked to talk, and I was like, oh yeah, for sure, I'll do the
Mhm.
civil discourse. It'll be fun, and it was a white guy, and then I just felt so like, does he not like feel any type of way about this? Like,
Right.
is there no, is
I
it,
would have.
like, so, and then like, there were certain times when like there were clear cultural clashes. Nobody watches this
Right.
podcast yet, so I'll just say this. There was one time that he was going off, we were talking about drug use, and then he was
Mhm.
like, he thinks it's a criminality problem, and he thinks that people shouldn't be allowed and we should just punish them via the law. And I'm like,
Me.
drug use is not a
Ooh.
criminality problem. It's a health problem, mental health,
Yeah.
physical health problem that we need to
Amen.
address using the actual research, which suggests that we don't just have them quit cold turkey or put them in, whatever, but
Yes.
we have organized areas where it's safe for them to do it. We can reduce the dosage. We can do all these things
It's a
to get them
systemic
off of
issue.
it. Exactly. But he just
100%.
couldn't see it like that. And then I see the
Well,
people in the
no.
audience, all Black faces, and they looking at him like, what the hell is he talking about? Looking at me like,
Right.
yeah, you're right. And you're talking about the research. So, I mean, it's just like you're in a space where now, and then like, I was like looking for him before and after the talk, and I was just like, where you at? So, did you just come through? So, I mean, I don't want to be no shade to the dude because we had a great talk and he's really smart, but it's just like, when you move in these spaces
Yeah.
and you are like
Read the
a
room.
guest in the culture, in the environment, there are certain ways you should move. I don't know if you saw this
Yeah.
TikTok thing about white people in H Mart. Did you see this?
No, but I probably should,
Oh my
apparently.
God. Okay, well, we'll couch that and save it for later
Okay.
because it was this whole
I have to
discussion
see it.
on TikTok. But yeah, that's
Gosh.
my diatribe. Once again, no hate to the boy that I did the man that I did the
No.
civil discourse with, but I just
But
think that there are
weird
some,
flex.
yeah,
Weird
cultural
flex.
humility things that we could kind of work on. And I think that also the individuals, I mean, we always, they say that the only way to not be critiqued is to never do anything ever, and I think that there's some improvements we can make in the Black men in applied behavior analysis where we kind of organize what presenters get the opportunity to
Right.
present. And I think that there
Yeah.
is a place for white people that are want to be co-conspirators, and Asian and Latina people, but I just think that it's like, we have to be strategic and smart about it,
Right.
and all that stuff. So
That,
yeah.
and that was going to be my question. So as you were talking about the example of like the WEBA conference with women, my next question was going to be, I'm not fully aware because I don't tend to go to bigger conferences now that I'm,
Mhm.
like paid to go to some of those things for CEUs. I will probably do that, but I'm going to
Yeah.
specifically go to conferences that are not ABAI
Yeah.
or white centered or male centered. I'm going to
Yeah.
go to the ones that, I want to see. But like going to like Black men in behavior analysis, I would expect to see only Black men amplified. And so, like, that was going to be my question. Do white people present at those conferences? Because I feel like I would be so let down because I would want to see those voices specifically speaking about these topics. But I
So
guess it happens. You.
I, I I don't think at that, this is the first one. This is like a summit. This is the first one. I don't think any
Okay.
white men presented.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't remember the whole list, and I wasn't part of that. But when we did that civil discourse, it was like a set time, it was a set thing, it was organized so that there was no other talks going on at the same time. So the taking up space of this was like kind of large, right? And then
Right.
there were some Black women that presented, and I think it was really cool what they did because they talked about how they can support Black men and how they
Yeah.
can. So I mean, I feel like if when we do Black women appreciation in behavior analysis, when we
Yeah.
do that, we can have Black men talking about how they can support Black women. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I think that's a great trade off because I remember one of the Black women was talking about how one of her RBTs is a fan of my content, and he saw me talking about professionalism, and he felt like
Yeah.
he had to cut his dreadlocks off. And he
Oh,
saw that, and he was questioning whether or not he had to cut his locks. And she like
so
told him like,
silly.
no, you know what I mean? You can show up as you are. You do great
Yeah.
work, So like fighting back against that. And then she was talking about how like she can, in her position, support. So I mean, like there's places and ways you can do it. But I
Yeah.
mean, we just have to be strategic and smart about it. And I think that
Agree.
you know and it's a learning process, you know what I mean? You're not going to be 100%. Like every single time there's a conference, there are things that could be better, and I think that it's
Yeah.
holding each other accountable, figuring out how we can support and help, and then doing the work to make it better each time.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm wanting to go back to that point that you made a while ago. There were so many good points here, but the point that you made a while ago about going to a conference and feeling just depleted versus like
Mhm,
having the cup full. I can't tell you. Well, there are some safe spaces that I've kind of helped curate. And, like I've done stuff for the Arkansas Association for Behavior Analysis for years. We have an
mhm,
amazing group on that board. They're very like neuroaffirming and their approach and everything. That is like one of the few conferences that I have gone to that I actually like enjoy, that I've been a
mhm,
part of and everything. But I'm also curating that environment. And um, anytime I went to like ABAI or other state conferences, not to call out any specifics, I don't always feel that type of way. And
yeah,
so it's like I tell my students, it's like if you're only giving and you're not receiving, that's not a good relationship, regardless of whether it's professional, regardless of whether it's personal or like romantic or whatever the case may be. It has to
mhm,
be a balance of the give and take. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. And so like it's just kind of got me thinking about, well, maybe that's why I dodge some of those conferences. Maybe that's why I don't go to them because they leave me feeling worse than when like I'm learning about some cool like ABAI is like one of the few places other than like the Standard Acceleration Society
mhm,
conferences for precision teaching. That's like one of the few places I can go to hear about those topics. And I've always
yeah,
thought that was great. I'm like, hey, there are people like me here,
mhm.
which is weird because they don't exist seemingly. Um, but yeah, other than going to like the Standard Acceleration Society stuff, that's the only place you can see these really niche topics that otherwise we don't see at big conferences, state conferences, all that.
Yeah,
And
and
so
they
I missed out on
care.
that. Right.
Yeah. And look, it's funny. I have this from the conference, right? And
Mhm.
in it, like we would get a package every time, and they have what are personal pronouns. They're talking about it. They're giving data on
Such
it.
a safe
They're
space.
describing like gender specific, gender neutral
Oh,
pronouns. Like they're
I
going in
love it.
depth and out of their way to make sure that the people that come, especially no offense, but the long timers, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, to help them come
Right.
into what is important, how to make everybody feel comfortable. They try to have a land acknowledgement given by somebody that is indigenous from that
Yes.
area. They
Yes.
really try to show that these are our values. These are what are important to us. We're going to show some of the most rigorous research you will see anywhere
Hmm.
in behavior science, and at the same time, we're going to make sure that everybody feels like they belong. And that's
Yeah.
so important, especially in this political climate. And it makes people feeling that they want to come back. That's why, like, I feel like I will never miss a conference, even though it's like 2 days from my girlfriend's birthday. So, we
It's
got to figure that
arbitrary though. You
out.
can celebrate it another day too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But those things matter and people
Yeah.
recognize them and then they're like, oh, okay. I want to come back to this. That
Yeah,
ABA big conference, don't know anybody, or it feels so much, or I feel so exhausted after. That's tough. But these smaller conferences where it feels more community driven, it feels more intimate, it really
they're
changes the game.
safer. Oh,
Yeah, safer.
100%.
Yeah,
And just
yeah,
hearing you talk about like the Standard Celebration Society, I'm like, okay, those are my people.
yeah.
100%. I need to go to that. And I think it'll redeem some of my faith that I've lost in our field. And it kind of makes me think like the Standard Celebration Society is basically like the Mr. Rogers of ABA. Like it's the
Yeah,
wholesome, good,
yeah.
come share the kiddie
Which
pool with me.
I don't want to act like they're perfect because there are problems still, you know what I
Yes,
mean? And
right.
problematic people,
Oh,
people
I
with
don't
problematic
know.
learning histories, they're still working on it. But I think it's really good. So that's why we got to get some of our research off the ground so we have something to
Uh-huh.
present. So then hopefully our university will pay us to go.
Oh my God, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Um, I love it. So, oh goodness. Yeah, I had somewhere else I was going with that, but I completely lost it. But all that to basically say, like when we go back into those spaces and we're working with students, I'm staunchly anti-ABAI. I am very, very staunchly against it. But a lot of students want to go because there are opportunities to present. And
Hmm.
so I make it a point to like try to dig out some of those other opportunities. It's like, well, you could do a poster at a state conference. Well, you could do this instead.
Hmm.
Um, and still make a stance against an organization that you may not agree with. And so I think all of this to basically say what we do is also just as important as how we provide that support to individuals. And so yeah, when we go to these other conferences, when we talk about these inequities as far as presenters at these very specific conferences, I'd like to say that you won the talk that you had at PMBA. Because it sounds to me like in that sort of context, even though it seemingly was set up in a way that was like, this is kind of icky, the way that it evolved, it seemed like it was very validating in that way for the
Hmm.
audience. Um, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I really like the conversation about these are all the things we could be doing, and students are going to see them, students are going to ask questions, students are going to want to know the why. Um, and that even goes down to how we are talking with them about research, about literature. Just this week, I told two students about problematic authors that they had cited in their works. I said, scratch that, find a better one.
Hmm.
Because I don't
Hmm.
want to give that name airspace. I don't want to give
Yeah,
them another citation. They don't need it.
yeah.
And most of the time, like, are we amplifying the authors who are older white men? I'm actually wearing my I've heard enough from old white man shirt today. Um,
Oh, that's
and
cool. I'm wearing my Golden State Valkyries. They're the WNBA team that just came to the Bay Area. So,
Oh, love it. So yeah, like fighting that establishment, like, who's serving on the BACB right now? I probably need to look, but I'm sure there's
yeah.
probably not, you know, black members. I'm just saying. Um, in fact, I could probably pull it up now while we're talking. But, are we representing? Are we actually promoting diversity in our citations, in the people who we promote at conferences? Are we doing these things? Well, if we're not, then we shouldn't be doing the thing. I also hesitate to
Yeah.
cite from Java, not to like put myself on a list somewhere, but it's like it's a very specific audience with a very specific set of privilege contingencies. And so it's like if we can find something that's not Java, let's do it.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
look up the author and they look like, the same old white guy that probably authored your textbook, maybe let's find a different source.
yeah.
I have intentionally done that with students. So yeah.
And while you look that up, intentionally looking up what the author looks like and how they come to the research is so important. We don't have positionality statements yet that are mandatory in applied behavior analysis. We should do that. But till then, I
Yeah.
highly recommend if you have a problem with an article you're reading, especially if they're talking about a population that's, disenfranchised, historically a minoritized population, I would go and look at the authors. What do they look like? And a lot of times you'll be like, dang, so you don't come from this culture, you don't
Right.
come from this environment. So you're just coming in doing research thinking that you're being objective and you're
Yeah.
non-biased, which is not actually a real thing. And you'll often
Yeah.
find that it's like, this is an outsider looking in without the complete scope and perspective of what actual contingencies are operating on their behavior.
Absolutely. And I love that you call out that everyone has bias. And that's the thing, like
Yeah.
bias can be good, bias can be bad.
Yeah.
But understanding that we all have bias, it's all from our learning history, it's all from our environment, and knowing what is the ethical code, it's just being aware of personal biases.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing is like I know my experience is not the same as your experience. Likewise, you
Mhm.
know your experience is not the same as my experience, and that is acknowledging our personal biases. I could be limited in some of the feedback that I would provide somebody,
Mhm.
that I don't identify fully with, but just being aware of that and even disclosing that can be so safe for individuals. And that's another thing as instructors we should definitely be doing is acknowledging that and calling it out and not dodging around the topic. Well, I don't want to talk about race. I don't want to talk about
Mhm.
sexism. I don't want to talk about any of these things. Like we need to cut that shit. Like
I agree. And it helps so much with your research to help the
yes.
reader understand where you're coming from. That's why I think we really need those positionality statements that say, hey, this is me, this is where I come from, this is
Yeah.
how I come to the research, these are my how I identify. Because, like, for example, when I was working with middle schoolers on their anxious thoughts and feelings, I had
Hmm.
students that identified as male and students that identified as female. It was easier for me to connect with the students that identified as male than it was for me to connect with the students that identified as female. So when I had my interviews, my pre and post interviews, I got more out of the males than the females. I felt like because I just had a better connection with the males talking about video games and
Right.
sports and stuff like that
Which I
compared
have
to
personal issue with. We play video games too. They just weren't
no, no,
represented
no,
in your
yeah.
sample.
Exactly. So like if I had a positionality statement to say, hey, I am a straight black male that comes from this and
Yeah.
that's interested in this and stuff like that. And these are, females who don't exactly identify similarly. And, I don't feel like I was able to connect with them as well. So when they speak about their experience in the intervention, they may not have been able to give me more than if it was maybe you or somebody else that was better able to connect with them because of their lived experiences. That affects how the data look and how the research paper is written and presents and the words that they use when they do the interview. It all affects our research.
Oh, totally. And kind of to that point, interestingly, on the BACB board, we have one white man.
Hmm.
I should say masculine presenting because they
Okay.
don't have pronouns for
Hmm.
any of the participants on the board of directors, but
Of
the
course.
CEO presents as a white masculine. And then the entire board of directors all appear femme presenting and feminine presenting. And
Mm.
now I do see Pacific Islander Asian, but we could argue those are white passing identities. And
Hmm.
so I don't see any additional representation. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 on the board
Mm.
who are not the CEO. And also, I find it weird that the BACB has a CEO. I'm just going to throw that one out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, because I didn't realize that it was headed by a CEO. Like, how
Yeah.
corporation-y does that freaking
Ooh.
sound?
Now look up ABAI.
Should we start the next episode with that? Because I
Well,
feel
I
like
do.
let's
The
dive in.
the next episode I do want to talk about ethical use of AI. I think we could do
Oh,
like a
yeah, let's do this
shallow
then.
dive, and we could bring research that we found in a little bit at a different episode. But I think a shallow dive into ethical use of of AI
Let's talk about that next time
is
then.
yeah, okay, perfect.
Let me find this in About Us. So yeah, it takes me back to the same thing. So there are no pronouns. There are no identities listed. This is even something that in professional presentations I've kind of started doing where it's like, hey, I just want to advise that my pronouns are she, her, I am feminine, I identify as a woman, I'm heterosexual, all these things. I'm also disabled, visibly and
Hmm.
not always visibly. And
Hmm.
that helps a lot with context for how I'm presenting my content.
Yes.
And I try to like throw that in there occasionally. Keep in mind, I'm speaking from this position. And I find that I get a lot of really positive feedback when I do preface with all of that, just
Hmm.
identifying this as my framework that I'm working off of. But I feel that the BACB is really missing a good opportunity for not including those contextual factors. And am I surprised by it? No, because we repelled the whole DEI ideas early in the year.
Yeah.
And not to
And
make
are
this about bashing the BACB fully. I just want to throw, I'm not, I'm
yeah.
certified. Please don't come at me. But also weird flex.
No, I understand. And then I think that also it might be a concern that the BACB and other ABA affiliates are caving to the Trump administration.
Oh, 100%. This shouldn't be
You know,
political. This should be just common sense.
well, also the personal is political. Everything is political, I think. And I think that you make a
Fact.
choice whether to stand up or to not stand up. And
Yeah.
there are places that have chosen to and not chosen to. I made a video about it and I was very frustrated. But I mean, it's like, it's like, well, Texas, they're blah blah blah. It's like, so our entire division, ABAI or BACB, is all just going to capitulate to one state because that's what they want to do. Like it just doesn't seem right. And it's like, okay, well, we know this is bad. We don't agree with it, but we're going to do it because the bad man's in office. Like it's giving, I'm going to just follow orders. I'm just following orders.
Right. Man.
Do we want to do a hard stop to change the episode to the next one?
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
We can definitely do that. Okay, so just real quick, it's also very hard to find ABI's executive council. Um,
Mm,
I like, but they have like 50,000 links at the top, and so I'm like trying to figure out where we are. Okay, so past presidents, two masculine presenting, seemingly white individuals, now feminine presenting individual, but appears to be Caucasian. Let's see, representatives. Oh, we have a black feminine presenting
hmm.
representative. That's great. One, two, three masculine presenting white. Four white masculine presenting representatives, and then three white feminine representatives.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
not
mean,
surprising.
no, it's not.
Next,
And
Java.
I don't think that they would have to go out of their way because I know a lot of people are trying to have those positions that are not white, masculine presenting people. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So it's a choice. And from what I've heard, the streets are saying that a lot of these individuals are selected because they work at like specific clinics, specific large ABA clinics.
That's a
They
whole other issue too.
yeah,
Private
they
equity
studied
and
under
all
a
that.
certain person. There's like it's like, oh, there's a very clear through line of who gets selected. And it's like, oh, okay, I see it's, one of those old boys clubs or
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh yeah,
So
100%. And funnily enough, I looked up Java because I'm a turd. And I love how snarky we are, by the way.
mhm,
It's so great. So I looked up the editorial board of Java. Interestingly enough, no pictures. So I can't like go off of that, but I would have to vet a
mhm,
lot of people here. But I'm seeing a lot of the same schools and the same. So like to your point about that networking, um,
mhm.
so autism, I don't network well. if I happen to have connections with people, it's because I've worked with them or I've like, had them as a student or whatever the case may be. And I do tend to collect people that way, but I'm not the person at conferences like just going out to hand out my business card. Like to me, that's so
Hmm.
cringe. But if it works for you, do it. Um, I'm definitely not a butt kisser as well. And
Yeah.
I feel that, I would never get a position like on an editorial board because I don't kiss butt. I don't know, maybe
Hmm.
I'm wrong,
Hmm.
but I just don't see that happening for somebody like me.
No, I get it. I get it. And like when you talk about the quote unquote soft skills, maybe that's one of the soft skills that
Skills.
people have to learn. Which no shade is soft skills,
Uh,
because I'm doing a workshop on soft skills at behavior analyst, professional behavior analyst,
mhm.
whatever that one is.
APBA, right?
APBA. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm doing a presentation on soft skills, which I think is important. But like, there are certain, behaviors that are going to get you in the door.
Yeah.
Which, also it's like, some people could blame the people for doing those behaviors, but also blame the individuals that are holding the door and only opening it if they engage in those
Yes.
behaviors. Like, it's like, oh, this woman slept her
Enablers.
way to the top. And it's like, oh, well, people were also withholding that position unless she
Yeah.
slept her way to the top. There were people that were women that had the qualifications, experience, and ability, but since she didn't do that, they weren't going to open the door for her to have that opportunity. So I think
Oh,
that's what we need to be talking about, especially more so than the individual that did XYZ behavior to get there.
right. Oh, you're totally talking about enabling problematic issues and systemic problems.
Yep.
So, I mean, I call them enablers. That's just, it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
use like a trauma assumed framework, and,
Hmm.
PTSD models will say that anybody who allows abuse to continue enables that. And I think it's abuse of a
Hmm.
system, like
Yeah.
100%. I'll call it what it is. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna have to like vet. There's a whole ton of names on here, but I also wonder if the board of editors serves as more of like a, but we're doing the thing. You know what I mean? And so like I see associate editors, which I know a couple of them in particular are white. Um, and then I see a couple of masculine focused names. Hopefully I'm being respectful to gender when I say these. But
Hmm.
I also don't want to assume someone's gender if there are no pronouns. So
Yeah.
full disclosure. But the board of editors seems a lot more diverse with the names. And
Hmm.
so it's
Hmm.
kind of one of those things where it's like, well, but we did the thing because we have diversity in our board of editors, but what about leadership? And
Yeah.
this goes back to the whole conversation that I've had with some of my disabled professional peers, where it's like, okay, so you're working in an autism clinic and you're supporting autistic individuals, but at the higher up, there are no autistic people here. So how do you all know what's actually best for autistic learners if you yourself don't identify with that community?
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of goes back to that whole conversation. Representation is so important, even at those highest tiers. Um, but yeah, that's a whole systems approach with disability that we could talk about for hours. But
Yeah.
anyway, I think that's a good place to maybe stop because, like, talking about, go to these websites and look and see who's in charge.
Yeah.
100% recommend doing it. Teach
Yeah,
your
be
students to do it.
curious. Yeah, be curious, because like that's really what it boils down to. And that's really what makes great scientists is they're curious. So if we can foster, nurture, reinforce that curiosity,
Yeah.
especially to generalize and adduce in its contingencies, then we're gonna have some incredible individuals that are really doing good work.
Yes, absolutely. Love it.